Shall I say it's a pleasure to talk to William Harrington, minister, politician, soccer fan, family man. Did I miss anything on that list?
Yes, and now business consultant
Okay,
presently,
let's get
but
to business.
retired politician in inverted commas.
Retired, not tired.
No, not at all.
Let's have a conversation, shall we? Born in Senanga, did the little boy in you ever think that you would rise to some of the positions you rose to in this country?
Yeah. Zita, firstly, let me thank you for having this interview with me. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to appear on QTV program interviewed by yourself. Yes, I was born in 1950 at Senanga, Barosland at the time. I'm now 70 years old this year, but I can assure you that I still feel 30 or 40 years old. I did not see the difference when I was that time.
Well done.
Health-wise.
Well done.
No, at that time, obviously, politics was not in my thoughts. But interestingly, my late father, Willie Harrington, was involved in politics as an elected, unopposed in Senanga under the UNIP government. He stood unopposed because when he put up his name for election, the rest of the people, out of respect that he had for him, they all withdrew their candidature. So he stood unopposed as an MP of Senanga. I think I may have followed the footsteps of my late father from that time onwards. I followed his political career closely, and he got me interested in politics to a certain extent. And interestingly, when he retired, by the way, he resigned from Parliament because he felt he was more useful in Senanga than sitting in Parliament debating. So he resigned from Parliament. And strangely is that when people started agitating for political change, for multi-party democracy in this country, I influenced him a lot to follow also what was happening. And he got a lot of interest. And he declared during one of the campaign rallies which was where President Levi Mwanawasa's vice president was campaigning. He went to attend the rally and he was called to the dais to come and say a few words to the people. He was a UNIP trustee still at that time, but he was interested to see what was this wind of change all about. And he made one statement, and he appealed to the people of Senanga in particular, and the people of Western Province in general, to support the MMD under President Chiluba, because he realized that there was a wind of change, and we should not stand in the way of that wind of change. And there was no way you can stand against the people. And from that declaration onwards, that appeal, the whole mood in Western Province changed to support the MMD government.
Tell me something. So, what was the biggest attraction to politics? It was a dirty game, full of people who don't say the truth. At least that's what some good Christians believe.
Yes, but it's what you make. There might be a perception that some people are out there that politics is a dirty game where people only enter for political or financial benefit, to use their position to benefit themselves. Listen, I come from quite a well-to-do background. My family was my father was a prominent businessman in Senanga. I also followed his footsteps in business. I was quite a prominent businessman in Southern Province. I owned a fleet of trucks. And that's why I never, when MMD won in 1991, I continued with my business because it was doing relatively well. And I had no reason to come to politics to enrich myself. I was already in that position where I did not need to join politics. So for me, politics was not about self-aggrandizement or the benefit, but for service to the people.
You sound like you're defending your profession. You mean to tell me there's nothing dirty about politics? Zero. Or is it William Harrington who's only the spotlessly clean politician?
Yes, I agree with the first Republican president who once said that politics is not dirty. It's how you handle politics. It's a human factor that makes politics dirty.
So you don't mind getting dirty?
Of course, I do mind getting dirty, but are you saying that by me joining politics, I'm joining the group, a dirty group of people? I'm joining the...
That's the perception. I've told you, you live in a Christian nation. You
Yes.
know that certain Christians don't feel that politics is a good profession because half of the time you people have perfected the art of lying.
Yeah, well, you can look at people like Dr. Neves Mumba. He's a born-again Christian. He's the president of the MMD now.
I'm saying lying.
Yeah.
Politicians are seemingly understood
Well,
to
I
be
cannot
liars.
I cannot talk in general terms about anybody else who being politicians are liars. For me, lying is not in my vocabulary. I've conducted myself in a manner devoid of lying. It's not part of my nature. Even if I joined politics, I don't think I fell into that trap of being a liar. No.
Let truth be told then, William Harrington and sports. Let's understand the transaction.
Yeah.
You ended up Minister of Sport,
Yes.
but did it come with political office or it was something that was innate in you?
Let me first give you a brief background of my political career. I was nominated to Parliament in 1992, a year after MMD came to governance. I don't like using the word power. I like to use the word governance. Okay? In 1994, President Chiluba appointed me. My first portfolio was Minister of Communications and Transport. He then moved me to environment because I had some issues there with the airlines and so on. There was some infighting between the two airlines that were trying to establish themselves. Two private sector airlines who were fighting for airspace. So I had some challenges there. So I thank God that Chiluba saw the need to move me out of the limelight from that ministry and gave me a very key ministry of environment. And he told me, he said, I'm moving to environment. I'm mandating you to uplift the profile of this ministry. In other parts of the world, he told me, environment is taking center stage. Here, it's dead still. It's still in infancy. I know your capability. I'm moving you there to sort out the environment. But I was only there for a short time, again another year or so. And then he moved me to, I held several portfolios, including commerce and industry. He moved me to tourism. He moved me to, I was also minister of, which other one? Sports. Yes. Now, out of these ones, the most controversial and interesting was the Ministry of Sports.
That's why I'm here.
Controversial because, you know, it's as a sports minister, you're always in the limelight because it is a ministry with sports is a lot of following the country, from the youth to the elderly. They follow sports, in this, particularly football. As I say, Zambia is a footballing nation, and that ministry had all the controversies because of the FARS issues with FARS, etc., etc. But I can be proud to say that I tried my best to destroy the perception that I was Minister of Football. So I took it upon myself as a deliberate policy to even lift the profile of other sports like netball. I used to attend the various netball tournaments around the country, here in Lusaka, many times to encourage our young girls that it was this sports was not, that ministry was not just about football, but many other disciplines as well, basketball, volleyball, and so on. My doors were open to all the things. So of course, during my time as Minister of Sport, you might want to talk about, for example, the most controversial issue.
I'm coming.
Yes.
I'm coming. Let's discuss this. You served at Monze Swallows Football Club. council-sponsored team.
Yes.
How do you remember your 10 years managing a football club? What did it really mean and what prompted you to go there?
You're right. Monzi Swallows was a Monzi council-sponsored team. But because of the challenges the council were going through, they needed intervention of the private sector. And I offered my company, I offered myself to take over the challenge of sponsoring in a small way to the team, and also, and I was elected chairman of Monzi Swallows Football Club. We produced many sports representatives, like footballers like Dominic Sikazwe from, he was probably known as Magoi, who we sold to Nkana Red Devils, and he made quite an impact at Nkana. So that is the role I played, and then of course after that we were able to bring Monzi Swallows, I think, quite high up in the first division of the FAS League, in the first division. I think up to second or third. So I'm very proud of that record, that we're able to support to the extent that it reached.
Tell me something. You're a businessman. What was the business motive of going to Monzi Swallows? Was it just seeing an ailing duck and William Harrington to the rescue?
Yes, no. You know, this was a joint effort by the community, but I led the community into seeing the need to support our local football team. It was not only football in Monzi that I was interested in and supporting. I supported golf. We had the Harrington Trucking invitation every year at the Monzi Golf Club. So sports is in my blood. And it was one of the most popular golfing tournaments of Southern Province at the time. The Harrington Trucking Limited invitation. We had golfers from all over. The late Joshua Luminas, the late Samson Mukando, who is the father to Paddy Mukando at Radio Phoenix. All these, Stan Mwemba, they used to come to Monzi and have a good time playing golf. So I'm saying that it's not only football that I was interested in supporting.
Actually, your story sounds very nice. So, if I've got an interest in business and to politics, like you did, what should the kids at home actually learn from William Harrington? Of course, it must have built your political profile in Monzi.
Of course. Football does always help to lift one's profile. You become a figure that's associated with a public thing like sports, which is a public function, and your name spreads. But that was not really what I was aiming at. It was not part of my agenda that I would use sports to go into politics. At that time...
Was it politics or business? Where do you feel you got the bigger reward in terms of the 10 years that you spent at
both?
Monzi?
I think equally both. Even as a transporter, I think today, if we went together to Southern, even in Lusaka today, I meet a lot of people who come from Southern Province, and they still acknowledge the role I played in uplifting the standards of the people in terms of moving their animals to Lusaka, to Copperbelt, along the line of rail. Their maize, which they call Mapopwe. I was involved in cotton transportation. I was involved in distribution of fertilizer, transporting fertilizer to all the rural depots under Nambo at that time. Maybe you're not born yet, Ziche, by you're not aware.
No, I'm a good reader. I'm a good reader.
Nambo, yes.
Yeah.
So, of course, when I started supporting Monzi Swallows, it might have made me a bit more popular. I don't know. But then I even supported football at the national level in terms of supporting the national team through our association, first led by Mr. Hastings Masani, late, may his soul rest in peace. We formed the association in 1984-85, and then that time Zambia was fighting to qualify for the Olympics in Korea, and with our support, I'm proud to say that in our joint effort to support the national team, Zambia was able to qualify for the 1988 Olympics, and I traveled to Korea with a great number, big number of soccer fans to Korea to support, and we watched the tournament. Of course, we eliminated by Germany after beating Italy 4-0. Maybe our players must have got swollen-headed and so on, but that was a glorious performance by players like Kalusha Bwale, who I think captained the team at the time.
Tell me something. That place called the First Council. In your time at Monze Swallows, what was your footballing agenda, apart from providing the purse that dispensed the coins that were required to run the team? When you go to the First Council, what impression did you get about what football was and what football could be?
Interestingly, I never attended any First Council myself, personally. I never attended. Perhaps some of my committee members might have attended, but I personally did not attend. So
too big to attend such a small meeting?
Not too big, perhaps overwhelmed with my business commitments. You must understand being involved in the agricultural sector at that time and various challenges involved in the, farming community and so on. Perhaps I didn't find the time I didn't have the time to attend the First Council.
Part-time in that regard?
Yes.
Tell me something. So you went to the Chipolopolo Soccer Fans Association.
Yes.
You were a committee member.
I was correction. I was not a committee member. I was appointed. You can say the word appointed as patron of the association. Patron. I never held any committee position.
Tell me, what does football mean to this country? In your own words as William Harrington. What is this thing called football that can paint the country in national colors, scarfs out in the name of the country? Never seen anything that does that. Only football.
Yes. In Zambia, football is a matter of life and death. Either it brings life to you when things are going very well, everyone's very happy, and when things are not going well, as people hope they would bring the desired results and bring people together, then it's demoralizing. And I'm saying life and death in inverted commas. But when you have problems and challenges within the FAS association, etc., get involvement of FIFA, etc., then people become depressed, and it's not a very healthy situation.
Now, you went to the Olympic Games.
Yes.
That was towards the end, actually, of the reign of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda's time as leader of this country.
Yes.
I want you and me to discuss the transition,
yes,
since you had been involved in the game for a very long time. And I asked this question because you also served at the Ministry of Commerce. What was your understanding of the transaction there? Apart from you being one of the people that were championing policy change in terms of how our politics were going to be conducted in our country,
yes,
did you understand the far-reaching consequences with specific reference to football?
That's a loaded question. Listen, football is about continuity. Because there's a change of government doesn't mean that there should be a change in our sports. To me, it doesn't mean that. Change of government doesn't mean the sports agenda of this country must change. It must continue. Perhaps the new government and the MMD, and by the way, both President Kaunda was a very keen sportsman. And that's why, especially on sportsmen, but particularly football, that's why perhaps you recall that it was called the KK11. Because that time people were and the KK11 was the KK11. We used to wire teams, so to use that word, wire teams like the Zaire Leopards in Independence Stadium, Algeria. Those are Cameroon used to come here. Those are teams we used to. Malawi and them were small boys. We used to challenge big teams here: Cameroon, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco here at Independence Stadium. And that time, Ante Busalik, late Ante Busalik, who was the first coach of the KK11 that time. He was a very good psychological and a fitness expert, but a very good psychologist. In the change room, Zambia would decide. Today we are playing Malawi Sister Republic. Let's go for 1-0, 2-0. Okay, but when you were going to play Morocco, we try and hammer them 5-0, 4-0. You must play. You see, that's how we psych the players. So Chiruba also was a very keen soccer fan. He was a keen supporter of Nkana Red Devils at the time. Nkana Red Devils. So when I was Minister of Sport, one day I went to discuss. I was discussing football in his office and the football developments, and I mentioned the word Nkana Red Devils when he was already president. He didn't like it. He said, "No, please don't. It's not Nkana Red Devils. It's Nkana Football Club." He said Nkana Football Club. That time already he was trying to change the Christian nation business. So he didn't like that name.
Let me abandon it in reverse for you. So, regime change,
yes.
Something that you agitated for personally.
Yes.
So, UNIP is gone.
Yes.
And what went with UNIP was most of the football teams in this country were either directly government sponsored or quasi-government sponsored.
Yes.
And then when you people in the MMD said, no, we are going to run things as a business. Everything is going to be a business. And so football for the first time was never going to receive milk. Imagine being born today and telling the baby, you will not drink milk.
Yeah.
Find it yourself or we'll give you a piece of chicken.
Yeah, maybe the transition sadly was too abrupt. That sudden policy change that looked normal. And you know, under the old regime, the counter regime, many teams were sponsored by parastatals. You talk about Cabo Warriors sponsored by Zambia Railways, NAPSA, Profund Warriors, and all those were sponsored by. So when as you say, the milk was taken away from these teams, the private sector were not ready to they were not serious with the private.
Not serious?
Some were not serious.
But why would you support a policy decision where you feel that there are certain people who are seriously not going to sustain
football,
the new policy twist?
Listen, that time already, the policy was in place. Okay? The policy in 91, MMD had its manifesto. And the manifesto, I do not recall what it said, but if it was about leaving private sector to sponsor football, we only created MMD created the enabling environment for the private sector to flourish and create the necessary resources for these sports associations, sports teams to
Would you actually admit that, what, 20, almost 30 years on?
Yes.
That policy twist was too early, too soon, big mistake?
I wouldn't say big mistake, because all over the world today, if you look at most of the countries, most of the teams are sponsored by private sector. Zambia is not an island. We've got to follow suit. We're not an island. And by the way, parastatals, most parastatals, especially in Zambia, were loss-making anyway. Okay, you talk about UBZ, you talk about Zambia Airways. It was loss-making. These are loss-making companies. And how did you expect them again to start to sacrifice their meager earnings, resources to support sports? So we wanted the post-American government to encourage the private sector to support corporate, what you call corporate responsibility.
Social responsibility.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Harrington Trucking Company had a good corporate social responsibility program.
I'm proud of it.
Successfully so.
Yes.
So you knew what it actually took to actually have a profitable institution and support a football team and not mess up either the business or the football.
Yes. Well,
your voice was seemingly conspicuously not loud enough when that policy change was made. Would I be right to accuse you of that?
That's another difficult one, but I would not accept that the responsibility, because I tried in my own way as a businessman, as a transporter in wherever I was operating, but not all managers are able to support sports from their operations. I was able.
What was different? What was different in the case of Harrington Trucking Company, and for lack of better examples,
I had a better
Zambia State Insurance.
I was a better business. I had better business acumen
than the others.
Perhaps.
When did you realize that?
In the early 90s, I realized that. In the early 90s, towards 2000 to 2000.
Tell me something.
Yes.
So let's put it into perspective. When you walk in, or once you are sworn in, they call it, as Minister of Youth, Sport and Child Development by the late Dr. Frederick Jacob Titus Chiluba, what were the rules of engagement?
Firstly, there's no such thing as swearing in when you are transferred from one ministry to another. You're only sworn in once as a minister. And then the president can assign you to another ministry at any time. So there was no really there was no real swearing in.
Okay. So you arrive at the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Child Development. What did Dr. Chiluba want you to do?
He wanted me to, well, listen, the role of a minister as a minister is policy. It's policy. You don't get involved in management of sports. That is the role of the National Sports Council. Is a regulator of all sports in the country. The minister just facilitates policy or formulates policy and goes to Parliament. And if there's a need to amend the National Sports Council Act, that's the role of a minister, but not to get directly involved in the management of sports in the country. No. But of course, it was a challenge because doing quite well. You recall that my good friend Mr. Teddy Mulongo was the first chairman. And even the time when I was assigned to that ministry, Zambia had more or less qualified for the 1988 Africa Cup of Nations in Burkina Faso. We had little qualified. It was now just academic that Zambia would participate. We didn't do well there. We didn't go past the quarterfinals, unfortunately. We had a new coach who had just been brought in. Remember Bukat Zisa, who was brought in by Football Association, not by Mr. Harrington. He was brought in by FAS. We did not interfere ourselves, or myself as minister, or as government, in the recruitment of a new coach.
What did you think of Bukat Zis? A little bit tells me you didn't like his guts. You didn't like Bukat Zis.
No, I wouldn't say I didn't like him. I had issues with him in that I heard that, you know, the way he treated some of our players was not...
Which players in particular, Mr. Harrington?
I don't want to mention names here, but one of them was told to hop from after Zambia lost, I think, lost the game. He was told to hop to the hotel or whatever it is as a punishment. He was a bit harsh on the players, and I really didn't know his background. His background, I didn't know it. We should have been very more keen to know his background, but again, we left this to FAS that they had. Although government was paying for responsible for paying his thing, we should have had taken more interest. But my thing, actually, I was vindicated because he didn't last long in Zambia. Maybe,
According to Mr. Teddy Mlonga,
yes,
who was first president at the time,
yes.
he actually says you actually contributed to what turned out to be a abysmal performance by Bugadziz in his 10 years
Well,
Zambia coach, because he personally thought he was a great coach.
oh, he thought so? Well, I do not know where my brother is making that assertion from, on what he's basing that assertion. What I do know is that when Zambia didn't go far, didn't do well in Burkina Africa in 1988.
1998.
1998 Africa Cup of Nations. Sorry, thanks for the correction. Government wanted a report.
You wanted a report?
I wanted a report. Yes, I demanded it. I wanted a report on why, and I took the report to cabinet. Cabinet wanted a report, but I demanded from FAZ that, look, this is a position. Give me your report. You were funded as far as 2.8 billion kwacha for Zambia to participate in the Africa Cup of Nations 1998. Why is it? The question to me is, Minister, what happened? And when cabinet looked at the expenditures, it found that some of the expenditure was not related to the qualification of the Africa Cup. Bills for hotels, which were incurred 2 or 3 years even before that. They couldn't pay ZESCO things. So many other bills were not paid, and some of that money was used for that. And cabinet was not happy. And cabinet decided, under the chairmanship of Dr. Chiluba at that time, that there will be no more funding for FAZ. And if that contributed to the problem that FAZ had with Zisa, I had nothing personal against
Did cabinet, yourself,
yes,
or Dr. Chiluba actually want Teddy Mlonga out as FAZ president?
No, it's an unfair question for me. I would not be in a position to answer that question.
Personally, after that
no, you see,
situation?
In politics, whenever you want accountability, you become a very unpopular person because you are demanding accountability. And that's perhaps the problem that I found myself in. I was not very popular perhaps in certain quarters because I was demanding that accountability, and I insisted cabinet position is no more funding, not Harrington's position. It was a cabinet.
So, you mean to tell me that anybody who believes that the government at the time wanted to see Teddy Mlonga out of the position of first president is mistaken?
Absolutely. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
You froze funding. How did you expect him to survive?
As minister, at the time I can tell you that the government had no reason to want Teddy Mlonga to be out of FAZ, not at all. It certainly wasn't my desire. We were just demanding accountability for money provided for FAZ by government. But if that demand for accountability was meant that government didn't want Teddy Mlonga, I think it's absolutely wrong perception.
You don't take any credit for the man resigning in 1999?
Teddy Mlonga?
Yes.
No, I can't take credit for that. I can't. It was his personal desire.
What was your personal feeling when you heard that he had resigned?
I took it as his personal wish, and that government did not take pleasure, and they didn't have a hand. I can assure you, government had no hand in the resignation of Teddy Mlonga. He might have felt frustrated, or he might have been his personal feeling that perhaps the MMD government at the time didn't want him. I didn't get that impression myself that the president or anybody in government didn't want Teddy Mlonga. No. We are, as I mentioned to you, that we are serving. He's our chairman at the City of Lusaka, the PLC. He's our board chairman, and we do talk about these things. We joke about them. And Absolutely nothing personal.
It's
It was.
probably a similar tale to what Smarter will tell you about his reign about the first president. He said he felt he was not politically correct. How
Well, I can't comment.
important is political correctness if, say, someone is first president and wants to have a warm, hospitable relationship with Minister Harrington?
Yes, it's important. Of course, it's important. It's important that the minister and the FAS executive and the chairman have a good working relationship, because there is no working relationship, a conducive working relationship between the Football Association and government, then one cannot expect good results.
That means political correctness is a big asset.
Well, that is your opinion.
No, I'm asking. It's a question.
To a certain extent, yes. To a certain extent. To a certain extent. A minister appointed by the president, or anybody, any functionary in government, if he doesn't support the government and does not see eye to eye with the government, he resigns. Simple as that. Morally. So if Mr. Teddy Mulonga, I'm only hearing for the first time that people like Teddy Mulonga and Simata felt that they were not politically correct. I'm hearing for the first time, but I'll respect them for their if that was their feeling. I respect them for them, because then they're acting purely on principle.
Did you ever have a conversation with Teddy Mulonga during the Bobo Dialaso inquiries and whatnot? Because this matter finally went to court, and the Teddy Mulonga side of things actually won that case.
Yes. Well, I was not involved in the legal issues and legal aspects. He resigned. There was fresh elections, I think, in FAS at the time, and that was life must go on. You know,
it was never an embarrassing defeat.
No, not at all. In fact, by the time I think there was any litigation in court by Mr. Mulonga, I had probably moved to another ministry anyway. So life must go on. It's a government. So
you strike me as a gentleman.
I am.
At that point, any perfect gentleman would actually owe Teddy Mulonga an apology. Say, look, we wanted accountability. I actually thought that you were found wanting, and hence the process to establish the truth. That probably inconvenienced you.
You see, at that time I didn't look at FAS as Teddy Mulonga. I looked at FAS as FAS, not as a one-man show. So these sanctions,
to the whole group.
Hold on, yeah, these sanctions by government. I had friends in there, the Kasengeles and all those Ugreda, Mr. Ugreda. We're friends up to today. We meet each other, we talk. So the question of apology to me did not arise at that time, and neither does it arise now. No.
Did Teddy Mulonga ever make you feel that, Mr. Harrington, manners maketh man? As Bembas would say, Ensoni Ubuntu. Never embarrassed. Not one day.
Myself?
Yeah.
No.
Is there anything you do differently if you could turn back the hands of time? There are threats on Zambia being banned.
Let me tell you one thing. It's collective responsibility. Yes, the minister is responsible, but any decisions that were made by government, I was part of the decision. It was collective. So in the spirit of collective responsibility, okay, what happened was government action, not Harrington's action. The issue of government or cabinet decision to stop funding FAS until and unless they could account for the money used or abused, it was a cabinet decision, not Harrington's decision. I think that I must make abundantly clear. People may point at me, but I'm not aware of anybody really pointing at me about the whole impasse. We had quite a serious impasse that time. We call it impasse. but I never felt responsible for anybody's resignation or what. It's a personal decision, you know. You might feel
FIFA took the side of the then FAS executive, defended them.
going by press reports, yes, and I want to tell you that as I've already mentioned that I never saw anything official on my desk as minister at the time from FIFA threatening to sanction. It was all in the press. We never received as government any. Certainly, I as minister never received any threats from official threat from FIFA that FIFA would sanction Zambia because of the impasse between FAS and government, not FAS and Harrington. Let's make it very clear: FAS and government.
So you, as minister, your policy was never to. You'd see a screaming headline: FIFA is going to crack his whip. You flip to the next page. Or would you actually read those stories?
Of course we read those stories. Of course it was a concern. And as a responsible government, we said, look, why risk? What is there to gain? What is there to what is there to gain from this risk? Why take a risk? If there are these threats of sanction by FIFA, well, then you know.
But never intimidated. Was the prospect of Zambia being banned something that sent shivers down the spine of yourself and your colleagues at the ministry and in government?
Yeah, as I said, football in Zambia is a mass sport. It's a very popular sport. So the perception created there then obviously would have made the government very unpopular. It would have made government very unpopular, even if government meant well by demanding, and we are strange creatures, we human beings, especially Zambians, where government is asking for accountability of public funds. Somehow the ordinary taxpayer doesn't see the importance of that. They rather look at saying, we'll be banned from football. They don't look at the positive side of it because it's their money. And to spend 2.8 billion on a football team going for the Africa Cup of Nations on frivolous expenditures, which government use with frivolous expenditures, unwarranted expenditure. Okay, I think it was a good reason the government made the decision not to continue to sponsor the national team. No more funding from government because of that huge sum of money. Really, 2.8 billion is a lot of money.
Did you actually feel that FAS at the time was trying to blackmail or fix government in not pursuing this matter because football is a mass sport, and because it's a mass sport, it's going to cause uproar? Did you ever feel that you were being blackmailed not to do what you needed to do, as you put it?
Again, to a certain extent, yes, I felt that way, that, this is blackmail. To a certain extent, I felt that FAS were blackmailing government, forcing government to rescind its decision on funding to the Football Association. I'll be quite clear on that one, that to a certain extent. There's an element of blackmail. There was an element of blackmail. But you see, I don't want to open old wounds with anybody. I don't want to, not my interest or interest of anybody, to open old wounds over the impasse that government had, or the impasse between government and the football association at the time.
Your actions.
It doesn't help anybody now.
Yeah.
We should be forward-looking rather than looking back.
Or your actions.
Maybe we should learn from experiences.
Yes. Let's talk about the experience. Did you have blessings of your appointing authority regards all the decisions and all the comments and actions you actually made during the time of the impasse between the Football Association and government?
Our government, if you look at the difference about our government and perhaps the current one, that time we never hero worshipped the president. But we would consult him quietly and would advise quietly. We never in every sentence said according to the directive from President Dr. Titus Jacob Tuluva and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. We never went to that extent. There was no hero worshipping with us. We did what we had to do. He gave us liberty, but we would consult him. And I can assure you that the issues between FAZ and it was with whatever I said about FAZ was derived from cabinet decision, not my decisions.
Did he have a strong opinion about what was going on in football at the time, the president?
Yes, you are talking about the issue of the accountability of or the issues.
The whole thing, it's stemming from a call for accountability on the part of government, yes. And what later began to happen, freezing.
Of course.
He had a strong opinion about that.
Of course, as a head of cabinet, as a president, as a chair of cabinet, of course. Of course he would.
Strong. And you mirrored that opinion.
I was convinced that he had a strong opinion as president.
Tell me something. So you inherited a ministry that was in charge of managing a mass sport, and the backdrop was 1993. We lose our team on the coast of Gabon.
Yes.
94 we make it to the final.
Yes.
96 we're at Bloemfontein.
Yes.
Bobo Dialaso knocked out in the group stage.
Yeah.
Can 2000 knocked out in the group stage. Still minister. You are the one that is seemingly overseeing the ministry. What was government's impression after 96 about being knocked out in the first round?
Yeah, well, let's put the record straight first. 1993, the Minister of Sport then was Deepak Patel, the time of the Gabon disaster.
Yes.
He was the Minister of Sport at the time.
You inherited that ministry. Coming in 94, we make it to the final of AFCON.
Yeah.
96, we get to number 3 in Bloemfontein in South Africa.
Yes.
Then 98, 2000, and probably 2002, knocked out in the group stage.
Yes.
What was being said in the corridors of power about? What does it mean in government circles if the Chipolopolo, for example, does not succeed on the pitch?
Feelings are very strong because football is politics. You know, when the Zambian national team does well, it has an impact on government. Okay, it has an impact on the elections. You do well in football, the Zambian national team does well, I can assure you that your chances of winning the next elections are high. You gain a lot of votes. Never mind the environmental problems, health problems, coronavirus. Football is a key factor in determining the success of any government in power.
So, would it be correct to therefore say the actions of any government, especially when you're a Minister of Sport, was preserving the fortunes of the movement for multi-party democracy regards the election that was going to come next after that?
Again, that's another difficult question, but let me try to answer you in the best way I can. Government always makes decisions in whatever sector, socio-economic, political sector of the economy, which will guarantee it to win or to consolidate its hold on governance. I don't like to use the word power. I like to use the word hold on governance. Okay? Of course, if any government, for example, in sports, does not make the right decisions, then it could be digging its own grave as far as the elections are concerned. Because you'd like to make decisions that are popular with the people and make sure that football is appreciated by the people.
Tell me something.
Yes.
So, you were telling me that you wanted to dispel the myth or the misconception that you were not going to be a minister of football, you're going to be a minister of sports.
Yes.
But it's in this country where, for example, a Zambian karate team will struggle to find air tickets, for example, even to travel to the next country.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But there'll be plenty of money, bucket loads of money, to take a football team across oceans.
Yes.
Can you explain to me, why does that happen?
People love, firstly, they love football, but it's the responsibility of government to support all sports disciplines.
Is it practical? Would it be responsible if we had $1 million and football needed $950,000 for it to be successful? As minister in charge of the Ministry of Sport, would you even want to reduce that football budget by even $1?
It would be a very difficult decision to make, to reduce it by $1, which will disable a
So
team to travel.
you wouldn't mind the netball team not traveling because football needs to be played, must be played, will be played without fail.
Listen, if you don't play, there are sanctions. Say you don't qualify. Say you don't participate in the tournament qualifying rounds. You don't participate.
Can I
There are
say
sanctions. There are sanctions.
Political sanctions on the part of the government in power. Would it be the correct way to look at it?
No, I'm talking about sanctions in terms of if a country doesn't fulfill its engagements, then there are sanctions from the governing body, isn't it? That's all.
Yeah, but the Rugby Association will argue that, the Cricket Association, everyone will argue that.
Yeah.
But it's seemingly popular now that football always get all it needs.
Yeah.
And the others probably need to go with begging balls, go to TV stations, radio stations, plead and hope that the minister hears them.
It may be impossible not to support a football team which is going out to play. It may be difficult on account of one kwacha deduction from its budget.
So
there's no government or minister who will say no, we could not raise one kwacha, or we had to give so much to, and therefore Zambian national team. And that's the reality of the situation in Zambia and most African countries. Football comes first, but it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. It came first during your time as minister.
No, I don't know how you say it came first.
To receive the lion's share of the money.
It was in the budget. It wasn't my budget. It wasn't my budget. By the time I was appointed minister, budget already been passed.
No, I'm saying you've been in parliament before. Help me understand. Yeah. If I go to parliament, and this is just for the understanding of those people who follow what may be termed as minor sports.
Yes, minor sports.
So parliament makes laws.
Yes.
And the majority of parliament, and there are government MPs in there, the independent MPs, the opposition MPs, but they approve a lion's share of the budget to football.
Well, listen, football is an expensive sport. Let's acknowledge that fact first. It's an expensive sport to run. Okay, because how many? If you look at the delegation of, for example, going to Africa Cup or going to qualify, going to play Morocco, or Tunisia, or Algeria, or Senegal. How much does it cost? It's an expensive sport to run. It's not as cheap as others.
Necessary evil.
Perhaps you can look at it that way. It's a necessary evil. Perhaps.
Listen to me.
Yes.
One day, your grandchild, or maybe even myself, if I rise the position of Minister of Sport, would you advise me to dare change a decades-long tradition of football receiving preferential treatment regards the funding it gets?
I think I would advise you to do it on a phased scale, not abrupt like that.
How many years, Mr. Harrington?
I think it's not important. I think the time frame is not important. What I'm saying is that it must be a phased. It can be 1 year, 5 years. A phased transition from funding one sport to funding all sports equitably. But to achieve that equity, I think that's where the challenge comes.
So let me take you back to management of football at macro and micro level.
Yeah.
With your time at Monza Swallows, so the structure adjustment program kicked in, and then the landscape on how football was going to be run, or sports in general, actually changed. Did you actually have challenges operating effectively as minister in view of the new policy direction that was coming from upstairs?
Of course, whenever there's a structural adjustment and so on, most sectors get affected by these changes, and sports is no exception. And this Ministry of Sports is no exception to facing challenges.
You personally, did you feel it in your heart that, listen, we need to reverse to what probably good old UNIP used to do? Because they took care of the infrastructure, took care of the sportsmen and women, and right now, I have to struggle to look for a budget line to pay these young people who are trying to pursue careers.
I don't know when you say the UNIP government took care of the infrastructure, what are you talking about? Sports
through ZCCM,
yes.
through quasi-government institutions,
Yes.
they took care of infrastructure, the stadiums. To a large extent, a lot of credit is given to government or government agencies for all the sporting infrastructure we have, especially on the Copper Belt. And when you took over the reins of power, a lot of commentators will say this infrastructure began to look like an eyesore.
You see, when liberalization of the economy came about through the MMD policies under late Frederick Chiluba, there was going to be some casualties along the way, brought about by this change of socio-economic dispensation.
Did you expect the casualties that came? Did any casualty surprise you?
No, I would not say I expected, but you know one thing, for example, when I was, prior to my taking over the chairmanship of Moses Swallows Football Club, it was a council-sponsored club, and they were going through financial difficulties because of the policies of the UNIP government. There was funding problems. There was councils not able to sustain themselves, and they were just not able. So even that time under the UNIP government, sports was under stress. It was not performing to the expectations of the people. So hence, the private sector had to come in to promote football and sports in general in this country. Nakambala Leopards, Nakambala Sugar Estate. There's so many other.
For the love of God, make me understand something. Yeah. Councils are statutory institutions. I look at them in the same breath as perhaps ZESCO to a large extent, that is the main supplier of power and was for a very long time. They will always get their money.
Yes.
Councils will always get their money. But explain what appears to be rocket science to me.
I can only talk about Monza
Swallows.
Council.
How come Monza Council was struggling to support a team that they gave birth to when the law empowered them to collect rates, give trading licenses? and all that, and the citizens
Well,
are paying.
sure. I cannot answer for Monzi Town Council. I cannot answer for them. You're asking me questions which I would also perhaps answer. Ask.
Did you understand why they had challenges?
There could be various factors: mismanagement, lack of accountability, misuse of funds, misapplication of funds. These are the factors which contribute. Overemployment, etc. Just perhaps corruption in general within the council.
How come your big political wig, and it was big,
Yes.
didn't help calm this?
Which one?
The big political wig, your connections to people in the corridors of power, didn't help bring sanity at Monza Council.
Now I'm talking about prior to 1991, before the MMD. So I had no connections. I had no big wig.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you now.
Prior to 1991.
Any council sponsored
you are talking
team
about
30 years on is seemingly still struggling up to now.
Which one?
Many council teams
yes.
are struggling on the funding tip.
Yes.
The same problem that your company, Harrington Trucking Company, came to sort out more than 3 decades ago. Still happening up to today. But the question is why?
That's a good question. I perhaps can ask the same question, but I don't have an answer to that. I don't have an answer.
When you went to...
Okay, let me ask you one thing. Is the economy any better now than it was 30 years ago? Is it any better?
In which context?
Economy, generally. Is the economy any better now? So you can relate that to the fact that even councils now are not performing.
You came to the rescue. The point is that you came to the rescue as a good corporate citizen.
Yes.
But did you understand why you needed to come to the rescue? Or you were actually funding people that needed to be disciplined in the way they actually did.
I was not funding the council. We were funding the team.
Yes, but the council should have taken better responsibility.
I agree with you.
Look at it this way. I have a child, and I expect you, Harrington Trucking Company, to come and rescue me, whilst me, the owner of the child, is not taking serious responsibility. But I am working. I'm earning pay. Why should you be buying diapers for my baby?
Yeah, sure. But at the same time, I was not happy or prepared to see a good team with great potential to groom players, to bring up players like what we did with people like Dominic Sikazwe, who we sold to Nkana Red Devils, Jaffet, what's his name, I don't know, all those good players. Why should I say no? Why should I have said no? I'm not going to put money in the management of Moses Swallows football team because the council is failing. That would be very unfair, isn't it?
But how come?
There's a corporate.
You seemingly fought what you perceived to be corruption when Teddy Mlonga was first president. But at Moses Swallows slapped them on the wrist.
No. I think no. I would like you to draw that word corruption. I never fought corruption. I was saying
impropriety.
Exactly.
You suspected impropriety.
Yeah, it would.
But at the council, you didn't suspect any impropriety.
No, I was not responsible for the council. I was not the council secretary.
No, I'm saying as a stakeholder, and you are paying hard-earned money to support a team because you love the sport.
Yes, exactly.
You were never concerned about what the council was doing on their part regards the money they had.
What makes you assume that I was not concerned?
What did you do about it?
What can you do as a private businessman? My role that time as a sponsor was...
With a big check, you can call for a meeting.
No, I was not giving money to the council to be accountable for the team.
You were taking care of the team?
Yes.
But if I had the money that Harrington Trucking Company had, probably call for a meeting. But a council secretary, mayor, whoever it is, look, I've been here for X years. I've been paying hard-earned money.
Yes.
I'm concerned.
Yes.
What is going on this side? Because two hands are better than one.
Now, but your question is that you're assuming that we didn't ask for accountability from the council.
Did you do
you're
that?
an assumption.
Is my assumption wrong?
No, your assumption is quite wrong.
What is correct then?
What is correct is that at every stage we gave money, we wanted the full account of how money was spent. If the team traveled, we wanted a breakdown of income and expenditure from things like gate takings, etc., etc. We always demanded for accountability from the management of the team. Management of the team. We were never, no one, including myself, ever gave money direct to the council to use. No. But we gave the money when the team needed to travel, how much for food allowance, how much for fuel, how much for blah, 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 blah. End of the day, we want accountability. And they always submitted. So I was satisfied with the money that the team was using from our sponsorship. I was satisfied with it.
Earlier on, you actually said perhaps the structural adjustment program,
Yes.
its effects could have been mitigated by a phased approach to how we're going to deal with sports.
Yes.
More than 3 decades on.
But
Do you see this country strategically ready to pick up where we should have picked up from in 1991?
Structural adjustment was for a certain period, specific period. I think structural adjustment ended in the late 90s. Okay, so now we got some other economic dispensation, whatever you call it. Now I think I don't see much hope for improvement of football. I think there's a lack of commitment from our government in terms of, for example, sports infrastructure. I'll give an example. I'll give an example with the Mongo Stadium. What happened when President Sata, may he so rest in peace, in the first year, one of the biggest things, greatest statements he made, which for me was purely appeasement. He said, we are going to build a Mongo Stadium. I've been on that site to see. Each time I go to Barosland, I pass through Mongo, I stop there to see. It's a mound of sand and a plaque, concrete plaque saying this foundation stone was laid by President Michael Sata. President, he was still alive at the time. Nothing, absolutely nothing has happened. So even the current government of Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who took over from him, has not followed up with his promise to the people of Western Province to build a stadium and things. So I'm saying there's very little hope. And now, listen, the economy, I think now, it will be very hard for this economy to sustain most socio-economic sectors, and I think sports too will be a victim of.
What would be your forecast? You were there. I was 70 years old.
Yes.
You were there from the beginning.
Yes.
What can we expect going forward in the next 10, 20, 30 years to this country and its sports? Would you be one of those that would actually make a silent prayer to heaven to actually bring back a system that worked like ZCCM?
Listen, sports, obviously, yes. Obviously, sports at that time, with the mines booming. Today, what's happening? Mines are laying off workers today. You read about it. It's a topical issue today where one of the biggest mines of the Commonwealth are more or less winding up operations, but they're on care maintenance. What? Because of the economic climate, not only in Zambia, but in the world, which is affecting Zambia. So I do not see, yeah, we can pray. It's all very nice. It's all very well. Prayers work sometimes, most of the time.
What would be your prayer?
God. In terms of sports?
Yes. What needs to happen? We live in a country where we're still complaining. Sometimes we miss the good old 70s and 80s.
Yes. Those were different times. Huh? The economy at that time, how much was the...
What should my generation be responsible for doing before we go to heaven?
Yeah, your generation should endeavor to ensure that right policies are put in place, policies which are implementable policies. Not talking about we're going to do this infrastructure, we're going to build this, when in fact there's no support in terms of budgeted support for those projects. So I would pray that the current and future governments be more committed to promoting the economy in general and sports in particular, because of course I have a passion apart from environment. My first passion is environment. My second passion, of course, is sports.
Tell me
So
something.
I would like to see that all our sports disciplines are promoted and supported by the current and future governments.
So, your time at the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Child Development came to an end.
Yes, came to an end, obviously. As I said,
What goes up comes down,
I was one of the few ministers in President Chiluba's government who was responsible, or who held at least 5 portfolios in a space of 6 years. So I sometimes wonder why that was the case, but I can only say, well, perhaps my president at that time wanted to give me vast, broad experience in all the sectors of the economy, from transport and communication, transport to environment, to sport, to commerce and industry, to tourism. So for me, it gave me vast experience in a short space of time. But of course, what goes up must come down, and my thing at the Minister of Sport came to an end, and I was assigned from there. I think I went to commerce and industry. So you can see, from sports to commerce. But basically, I'm a businessman. I cannot. When you are assigned to a ministry, you don't question. You just do your best in that ministry. So I never ever questioned why. But President Chilua had the courtesy of calling me. He called me personally and assured me that, look, what, just, environment.
Tell me something. What would you say is what would be your happiest memory of you being minister in charge of sports in this country, and probably the saddest?
It's hard to specifically pinpoint at one. Of course, during my time, even if I was not perhaps active in the run-up to qualifying for 1998 Africa Cup of Nations, but I witnessed Zambia's participation as minister, which for me was not an achievement, but a great pleasure, and it was a source of a great pleasure and pride that Zambia qualified to the Burkina Faso Africa Cup of Nations. One of the biggest challenges we had, of course, was the so-called FAS impasse. It was not a very happy phase in my time as minister. It made some people happy, some people sad, some disappointed over the FAS saga and threats from so-called threats from FIFA that Zambia would be sanctioned. It gave me sleepless nights sometimes to think what about if they're sanctioned? What about if Zambia is sanctioned? So I didn't look forward to Zambia being sanctioned, and before I realized, I was moved to another ministry.
Would you like to serve sports again?
I would like to serve in any capacity, but not so much sports. I think Zambia has bigger challenges than promotion of sports in this country. One of the biggest challenges is environmental protection, because environment is a cross-cutting issue. across all ministries. And I respect President Chua for one thing. He let me have the last say in cabinet on any paper that another minister bought. He always said, don't talk now. I want you to talk last. Let me hear what others are saying, then I'll listen to you. And normally if I said, no, I don't support this one, President Chua will support me. Why? Because he realized that environment must take center stage in the economy. It must assume center stage. For me, I have a great passion for the environment, for environmental protection and sustainable utilization of our natural resources, because our lives depend on that. If our resources are not used in a sustainable manner, it just creates more poverty, and people always will exploit the environment and their natural resources because of poverty. But by so doing, they are making themselves even poorer, because they are exhausting those resources which they are supposed to gain livelihood tomorrow. So Chuba told me when he put me to environment, he says, look, I've still got his letter. I've still got his letters. I kept them close to my heart. He wrote me, he says, look, this ministry is very important because it's about the lives, protecting and guaranteeing the lives of not only the present generation, but future generations. Today we see our headwaters are being taken over, developments in river headwaters. We talk about the conservation forest reserve 27. On one hand, the president degazettes it to allow for housing development. That's the headwaters of Chalimana and Chongwe River. Okay? And then in Parliament, in a State of the Nation address, he directs his Ministry of Lands and others to ensure that there's no developments in headwaters. To me, I find that contradictory and it's lacking of seriousness on behalf of our government. I don't want to be personal, I'm saying on behalf of our government, because President is government. We need to be serious. You can't be saying we are symbolically, people must plant more trees, and you are in the headline front page planting a tree, a small tree, symbolically, and yet you're allowing hundreds of trees to be destroyed in the forest reserve 27. The same. I mean, really. To me, that's lacking seriousness. So I'm saying, for me, if I had a choice today, look in other countries, since we are, Zambia is signatory to the Rio Summit. You know, we attended. The first minister of environment and natural resources, Mr. Kelly Waluvita, he attended that summit. Agenda 21. Zambia committed itself to putting Zambia at the center stage of our social economic development. Are we doing it now? No. President Chua was very keen on environment. He was a keen environmentalist, and I salute him for that. But when the late Mwanawasa came into power, into government, not power, he abolished that ministry, sadly, and he relegated it to an appendage of another ministry. I think it's tourism and environment or something like that. And I wrote him a 4-page letter expressing my concern, not displeasure, concern about his decision he took. And he never answered me. He never responded to my thing, but I made it very categorical to him. I said, posterity will judge you harshly. I told him that by your decision.
How should this country remember William Harrington as a minister of sport that oversaw the operations of the country's #1 sport, football?
Yes. I normally don't like to demand to be remembered, but if you're talking about legacy, the legacy which I think I hope I've left is that I tried my best to ensure that all sports got due promotion through government funding and policy. All sports. They can never be equality, but we endeavor to make sure that each sport, whether netball, volleyball, rugby, all got. My doors were always open to all sports disciplines. That's one thing also that I am. My doors were open to any sports discipline to come and discuss with me. So I cannot really talk about a specific legacy, but that's perhaps one of them that I could consider to be a legacy which I've left.
May many legacies in sports be made, Mr. Harrington. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your encouragement and for your encouragement. Maybe, who knows, if my services are required in future in any capacity, even now, I'm ready, willing, and able to be available in the public interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.